Welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And if you remember 3 business days ago, when we were discussing these SBA loans that were going out for coronavirus, we really said, how can this get manipulated, used, and abused by corporations? And we were speculating how it could be done. And we actually didn't really think of anything immediately that could be abused. It only took 3 days. It only took 3 days for us to see literally a blood-boiling corporate abuse. I mean, this is wild. You can't make this stuff up. Cody, tell us what's going on.
Well, it's not only corporate abuse. We have a... Hold on, let me get my...
Well, you have a very clean...
I know.
That's good.
But it's not only corporate abuse, though. It's also a very... It's my favorite story, which is government incompetence. Anyway, let's move into it. So this is the headline of this morning. Companies that are absolutely not small are getting millions of dollars in small business loans. The same day Potbelly announced it received a $10 million coronavirus loan, it also revealed it paid a $100,000 signing bonus to a new executive. I missed that early on in the league. That's fascinating. Now, what they're talking about here, for some of you guys who have been reading the news a little bit more, is that there is a bill... the PPP for short, which is the Payroll Protections Program. I believe, probably got it wrong because for whatever reason in this article they don't have it listed. Either way, it was a bill that was intended for...
It was a paycheck protection program, I think it was. Yeah.
And basically the idea was best way to sum it up, for businesses that had less than about 500 employees, so smaller businesses, you could apply for a forgivable loan. That loan would be forgivable as long as any employees you did lay off, you rehired, I believe, by June or July. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. I read in a bill as I don't own a restaurant, and I go, okay, whatever. And restaurant owners had a cow about that. Anyway, moving on. It found out that you were seeing companies that, as they mentioned here, were not very small companies at all, getting millions of dollars. Again, why is this so important? We find out all the time. Oh, some big company. It's because this pot of money ran out a few days ago. It was supposed to grant all these business money. Yeah. It did not get funded correctly.
I mean, $350 billion. That is literally, I mean, you look at the budget of Iowa. I think the budget of Iowa is $7 billion. I was watching a documentary recently that was talking about a bunch of people who are fighting against the swamp. And this guy was like, yeah, my entire state budget is like $7 billion. And here I am in Congress and people are saying, let's not argue about this too much. It's only $7 billion. You know, I mean, $350 billion, if you think about it, that's 8 states of Iowa. That is a formidable banana republic. Okay. You know, I mean, that's a lot of money that needs to be taken seriously. Anyway, continue.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw here, this was oh, wow.
Wow, that was a great ad.
I go out of my way to make sure these dumb ads don't pop up. I wait, I hold off, I click on this. Anyway, though, this was just before noon Eastern on Thursday. Only 14 days that businesses across America were first able to apply for loans through the $349 billion Paycheck Protection Program. Thank you. The U.S. Small Business Administration announced that it exhausted its allotted funds. The agency which administers PPP shut down its application and ceased enrolling new lenders into the program. So I just want to make sure to put some context in there because, again, all the time we find out, oh, guess which companies made a killing in this thing they weren't supposed to make any money in.
Yeah.
All the time. However, this is a little bit excessive when we're seeing sandwich maker Potbelly and Ruth Chris Steakhouse successfully obtaining loans worth $10 million and $20 million, respectively, according to filings this week with the Securities and Exchange Commissions. Taco Cabana, which has at least 164 stores across the country and is owned by parent company Fiesta Restaurant Group, also received a $10 million loan. All loans were from J.P. Morgan Bank, will be backed by the U.S. government as part of the $2 trillion CARES Act. Because the CARES Act, again, we've been talking about this a lot lately. The act provided up to $350 billion in loans to businesses with 500 employees or less for payroll purposes. I want to highlight that, 500 employees or less. Now, our geniuses up in Congress and the Senate, all 3 branches of geniuses in our government, they miss something. Or they didn't miss something. I guess they've never been to a restaurant before because the law provided some flexibility to restaurant and hotel groups by stating they could apply as long as they had no more than 500 workers at a single location. So Ruth Chris is a great example of this because I have to admit, I have never heard of Potbelly. I don't think they operate regionally out here.
They're not going to be
out here. There's a lot
of
regional chains that are like national because they have like but they're mostly in certain regions.
Yeah.
I've heard of Ruth Chris. I think they got those everywhere. I don't think if I worked at J.P. Morgan and I heard that Ruth's Chris was applying for a small business loan, the corporation of Ruth's Chris and their holding company were applying for a small business loan.
Now, well,
I would never in a million years. How does that happen?
Yeah, well, just so our audience knows, also, in case you don't have a Ruth's Chris in your area, it's the most expensive steakhouse you've probably ever been to. I mean, you can.
Chain.
Yeah, it's a chain, but like you'll buy an $800 steak there, and it's considered like when people say, "Oh, if you lose this bet, we'll buy you a steak dinner." They're talking about steakhouses like Ruth's Chris, where it's like $1,000 investment to have dinner there. Okay, you take a family of 4 out, you might be dropping $3,000 or $4,000 that night. And so they're very popular in centers of wealth of urban and wealthy neighborhoods throughout the nation.
Okay,
and they're getting a $10 million loan.
How about this is one maybe that more of you have heard of. This company, well, this is where I really want to get, so it gets funny, but Shake Shack. Also, some of Shake Shack, they applied for their small business loan and got it as well. Now, they gave theirs back. They gave their $10 million back, mostly because they got caught. It seemed to be it. Now, what's interesting is their CEO wrote a gigantic, we didn't do anything wrong, I swear letter and posted it on LinkedIn. And I want to go through that and highlight a couple things in here. He brings up a couple good points. There's some decent criticism of this the wording in this bill, the payroll protection or paycheck protection program. Oh, sorry. These bill makers, you know what? I prefer goofy nonsense like CARES, like you spell out long ass words. I prefer that to just like acronyms. Anyway, though, first of all, I just want to start from the top. I think the CEO of Shake Shack should have known they were not supposed to actually apply for the small business loan. They worded it like, well, it was confusing and, we just had to apply and find out later. Why are you applying for a small business loan?
Yeah.
You have like 8,000 employees across the entire country. You're applying for a small business loan.
Well, what was there? We didn't mention their loophole.
We did, yes. As long as there's here we go. By the way, this is from the letter from the CEO of Shake Shack, and he even mentions it right here. While the program was touted as relief for small businesses, we also learned it stipulated that any restaurant business, including restaurant chains, with no more than 500 employees per location would be eligible, which is hilarious to me. Who exactly is that exempting?
Yeah.
Like maybe if I want to declare my entire amusement park as a giant who is it exempt? Even then, I don't think there's 500 people that work at the concessions. Maybe 500 people at Disneyland concessions.
No, but I was thinking Disneyland too, but remember, they're independent restaurants within Disneyland.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
So you could say that who is exempting? At the Pirates of the Caribbean Lodge, we only have 256 employees.
Now, they do mention, I think any restaurant business. I saw as well they had something along the lines of for hotels, which is a little bit iffy, I think, even on hotels. But yes, I could feasibly see hotels you are exempting. God, it's just 500 employees at a single individual location. It's kind of crazy, even for massive chains. Like, you generally don't employ all your people in one or two locations for for commerce stuff. Like you might have a big headquarters, but even then, I don't know. It's crazy to me that was how this bill was written. And I love how confusing was the charitable definition. I think that what he's saying is, sorry. I think that really the Shake Shack CEO is like, I'm sorry the government's so stupid that they wrote this nonsense into the bill. I like how they describe it as, oh my God, it was like, oh my God, we were so happy to find out that there was some insane
he said
nonsense.
We cheered that news as it signaled that Congress had gotten the message.
There we go.
That is both an employer and for that as both as an employer and for the indispensable role we play in communities restaurants needed to survive.
Yes. And now let's get on to, because they did get their $10 million back, Steak Shack. And you think, wow.
Because they got caught.
Well, but I don't think Ruth's Chris gave it back yet. I don't think Potbelly's gave it back yet. It's a couple other companies. And we'll get on why would they do that, right? It's kind of weird. They just give back $10 million. It's kind of goofy. Well, Shake Shack. Because, by the way, again, I want to make sure for you guys who don't know, Shake Shack is a massive fast food chain that's 8,000 employees, I think
it's like the In-N-Out of the East Coast, and it's considered the most
Okay.
popular burger in New York City.
Yeah,
Shake Shack is considered the best burger in New York City.
When it came to California, big hit in California as well,
Yeah.
as far as popularity. Them not being a small business, they're able to take $10 million to give back to the government because They were fortunate enough last Friday to be able to access the additional capital they needed to ensure their long-term stability through an equity transaction in the public markets. It's exactly the kind of thing that we generally exempt businesses like them for applying for these small business loans. Because yes, if I own, Mega Burger, Mega Burger 2, Mega Burger 3 in my small little town and I need relief because I'm not a big, massive, I don't get these, thankfully we had, a little bit of an equity transaction in the public. Yes, that is exactly why you should not be eligible for this money. You're eligible to other monies elsewhere. And I don't know, it's insane to me to see that our Congress and our Senate had a bill that said that a restaurant chain is exempt from or is included in the small business relief as long as they have less than 500 employees. Because again, if everybody got paid, it'd be one thing. This was a first come, first serve bloodbath where everybody flooded and they ran out of money 2 weeks in. And no, not everybody got their money. Another reason why they're giving it back. You think even if there was $50 million, $60 million in waste, but this was still being funded and you could still apply, anyone would even care that much?
No.
They mildly annoying and they move on with their day. No, it's the fact that, because by the way, you know who else is noticing that there isn't enough room and this is first come, first serve? Well, it's all the small business owners that are noticing something else. There's another little bit of a game they're playing here. This one I'm not going to commend them, but this is funny. This is a great way for everything to play out. So essentially, we're seeing Chase, Wells Fargo, and a few other banks, JP Morgan, Chase, getting sued because what they did. Now, while these are forgivable loans by the government, they still get a little bit in their end. Through transaction. So anybody who was applying for a big loan, like, I don't know, maybe you think a company that's not actually a small business, like a Ruth's Chris, I'm not saying they were included in this.
Yeah.
They were moved to the front of the line. I will say they got their money. No one else. They're moved to the front of the line because it makes more money for Chase. It makes more money for Wells Fargo. Again, the kind of thing nobody really makes that big of a fuss about.
Because if
everybody gets paid. But now not everybody got paid. It was first come, first serve. And we found out who was the first come actually didn't matter. Everything got reshuffled. So the biggest askers, which were the most money would go to, they got it first. Everyone else, sorry. I'm sorry you only own one restaurant, so you don't need a $10 million check. You go to the bottom of the line because Shake Shack needs $10 million until they can get it, until they can just find $10 million in the market somehow.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just like credit card processors. Visa takes their 0.5%, Amex takes their 1%. And if that's what they're making is their small percentage, they're going to be interested in the $10 million loan more than the $100,000 loan that keeps the local family-owned pizza joint afloat in comparison to Pizza Hut, a chain that apparently can apply for small business loans, even though they're hundreds of millions of dollars in size, probably don't need it. If we're really honest with ourselves,
have access to other monies elsewhere.
They have
we
access.
Saw with Shake Shack.
They've got so much money in banks offshore. You want to know one of my friends?
How about additional grants that you're eligible for because you're a big company?
Yeah, they're getting tons of grants on the big business side, bailouts on the big business side, and then getting small business loans. This is nuts. And the reason why I'm so anti-bailout now, and I've become completely libertarian on this, and really why anybody should as well, is because I've talked to so many people, whether it's at Credit Suisse, whether it's Swiss Bank, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, all of them, Union Bank. And so many of these big dollar people I've become friends with have said, you know what, dude, I got $100 million offshore. If I want to build a factory or there's trouble here, why would I repatriate some of that money and lose 14% in corporate taxes when I can just apply for a loan? If I need to make a $10 million factory here, or I need to influx $50 million and I've got, $200 million sitting in the Cayman Islands, if I bring in $100 million here, I'm going to lose $14 million of that in just taxes overnight. Why not just say, my company needs a bailout, and they get a $10 million grant or loan at like some ridiculous 1% or 2%. So I'm only paying, $500,000 to $3 million in interest on this loan instead of losing $14 million in taxes. It's literally
how about this? Really quickly,
a 10% gain.
Oh yeah, well check this out.
In value.
Just to the point of the bigger
hit
business.
it.
They also added the Main Street lending program, which targets businesses that have as many as 10,000 employees. And it's basically just a sweet deal. Lower interest rates, more time to pay it off. It's just a very great loan. It's like they're applying for all these things at once, doing all the funny games you're talking about, and the average person has access to none of this. Well, and they get access to everything we have access to. We have access to nothing they have access to.
Well, they didn't even know what was happening. I think the average store owner was sweating bullets for 2 weeks before he even knew that there was eligibility for these SBA loans. Yeah. I started seeing ads for this coming up on Home Advisor and on Angie's List that a lot of contractors subscribe to and get leads from, saying, oh, hey, you can apply for coronavirus assistance. But reading by this article, $10 million had already gone to Ruth Chris, $20 million to Shake Shack, $10 million to this Potbelly Pig chain or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You're looking at it and you're thinking, holy, is there any money left?
Yeah, and why did they get?
By the time we hear about it, and we don't have lawyers who can spend the 3 days online that it takes to apply for the loan. By the time we hear about it, the money is already gone. How? To corporations getting SBA loans, Small Business Association loans. Ruth Chris. I mean, this is brutal.
Technically, the PPP, this is weird to say that. Technically, it just applies to small and mid-level businesses. Still, if you have hundreds and hundreds of locations across the country and you employ thousands of people, it was meant to not include you. Because guess what happens? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they were naive enough to think that there would be. However, I will say this though: it is funny how anything that includes regular people applying. Because as far as I understand that, if I own an individual restaurant, I could apply for money in this. All kinds of small businesses. As long as you're applying, you bet they can and will run out of money. Now, if it's the market, if it's Boeing, if it's companies that, if it's, by the way, we're talking about the Boeing bailouts, the people talking about the stock buybacks, that's one thing they did. They also had planes that were unsafe and were killing people flying around and they had to ground, right? Like, they'll find money for them, but I need some money to be my small business loan. Sorry, there's a weird loophole where it just makes more sense for us to give $10 million to Shake Shack because it makes us more money to our bank and we're allowed to do it. But get this, I want to just...
Okay.
Because that falls under the CARES Act. And I want to just remind people of something. Many of us have, many, not majority even me, many of us have received our $1,200 stimulus checks. A lot of us are still waiting. However, I want to remind people, there's a ton of people that don't even qualify for the stimulus check. So while Ruth's Chris qualifies for the small to medium-sized business loan, I want to go through the people that don't qualify for their $1,200 stimulus. Let's go through this. People with incomes above $99,000 or single parents with incomes above $1,365,000, which are $136,000.
By the way, if you made $137,000, which is totally possible, and I think is the top pay of like a principal at a high school, imagine how pissed you would be.
Oh yeah,
$500 over that arbitrary limit.
Oh yeah, and even think about the idea just of people that there's a lot of people, and I'm not gonna. A lot of us live in debt in this country, but still, depending on where you live, you could be making close to six figures, and you're like,
you could be paycheck to paycheck making $136,500 a year in California.
Easy.
You literally could be a single mom or a single dad living desperately paycheck to paycheck in just a simple basic house with barely any backyard and paying absurd for healthcare. Don't even get me started.
So we'll go through. Who else doesn't get the stimulus money? Oh, dependent children over 16. I love that. Dependent children over 16. So if you're situations where someone, I don't know, was like in their 30s.
Because your parent is getting $500 for you. Yeah.
Well, maybe. Not if they make too much money.
At that point, it'd be worth emancipating your children as minors.
Yeah. How about this? Dependent adults. But also, any of these groups, people think they could use a stimulus check, by the way. Dependent adults. Sorry. Anyone without a social security number? Sorry. No money for you. There we go. So everyone that falls into that, sorry, there's no stimulus money for you. You don't qualify. Oh, but Shake Shack needs $10 million in small business loans. You qualify. You qualify, Shake Shack. Wow. Oh, you guys also want millions of loans through our Main Street lending program? Guess what? You qualify for that as well. Oh, you want to qualify? It's insane what, like I said, as you get to these larger, we saw the same thing happen. Hold on 1 second. I want to see if I have this last thing pulled up. We saw the same thing happen when the stimulus checks were going out and people were finding out that, like, hold on a minute. Why are people getting stimulus checks that are worth millions of dollars, like 1.7 million we're seeing as an average for some people? Well, it appears the same CARES Act, which, by the way, if you unfortunately make too much money, but not enough to make savings, but enough to be arbitrarily considered as too rich, you don't get the stimulus. If you're considered dependent, you don't get the stimulus. Students, for example, a lot of them none of them get the stimulus. However, if you are in the position, because realistically, how are you getting this money? Mostly it's coming through a change in an not obscure, but a 2017 tax law about how you move your losses and how you claim losses in which year. And that's what changed. So if you're in a position to take advantage of that, guess what? You can get $1 million up here, because all of a sudden, when we were talking, me and Carter were talking to someone who does a lot of taxes about this, and they were like, oh, normally you can't even do that. What? They're letting you do that now? Yeah. So if you're in position to capitalize on this, it's awesome for you. Tell you what, if this means anything to you, the numbers may be closer to the truth because of additional language that applies the policy retroactively, so losses in 2018 can be carried back against the past 5 years.
Well, that was the carry back income tax.
Without getting too far into it, just the idea is, we did a video on it the other day if you want to go watch it, but the idea is this, if that jargon means something to you, which if it does, you probably know a lot of it. Ideally, you know about money. You're probably even a little bit wealthy. Guess what? You can game it, make $1.7 million. If you're a regular person who makes a little bit too much in salary, sorry, you get nothing, right? If you run a business and you found out a couple days too late about this new paycheck program they're putting out, and unfortunately, I don't need a $9 million loan, guess what? You go to the end of the line and, sorry, we're out of money.
Yeah.
And it's just this CARES Act, time and time again, has been it's helped a lot of people. That is good. I just think a much better version of this bill could have existed. I mean, it's ridiculous. The fact that Shake Shack was able to get the money they needed and just give their $10 million back, and like, yeah, you know what? We really just applied because these idiots let us, and for some reason they approved it, because technically there's no 500 employee Shake Shack out there.
Jeez.
It's just I really hope we don't have to do a part 3 on someone's abusing the CARES Act again to get millions of dollars.
And this is where my only call to action for any of us here is we just have to accept the fact that bailouts are now a thing. Whenever the economy goes downward, pretty much everybody asks for a bailout. We established a brutal precedent in 2008, which just ended up getting copied by, Bush established a brutal precedent of bailouts that ended up getting copied by Barack Obama and put on steroids. And now those steroids have been put on steroids in coronavirus, okay? And we actually established this trend in the 70s when Chrysler was bailed out. Okay, I know all of you political historians will be freaking out about that.
Could you not just say that that's just how the economy works, is that you run things kind of unsustainably till the government bails everything out?
Yeah. And this is basically just becoming a thing, just part of how we do economic business here. Instead of the government being separate from the economy, the government is now becoming the economy, which is strangely driving us towards central planning in a voluntary way instead of an involuntary way like dictatorship is. But there needs to be congressmen and officials' phones ringing off the hook and protests if there's another bailout in which we don't take a chunk as the people. Now, I'm not talking Bernie Sanders' whole, the workers got their 30% or whatever, so we just have a bunch of really crappy, non-functionally bureaucratic companies. I think companies do need to be private. But if Boeing's coming to the government saying, we need you to bail us out, then, and they're going to use the word, it's an investment. When you hear the word government, you really need to hear we the people. So if we the people as a society are going to bail out motherfucking Shake Shack, all right, then guess what? We get a dividend.
Yeah. At least
we could fund the freedom dividend just from bailouts.
Well, also, at least Shake Shack isn't making airplanes that kill people, by the way, which what Boeing was doing.
Yeah.
They're making airplanes that kill people. It's crazy. I don't want to get too far into Boeing. I actually have never seen the Hunger Games, but it's just crazy
in the Hunger
that
Games,
they were asking for money. It blows me away.
In the Hunger Games, everybody's name gets put in to pay tribute, but also if you want extra food, you can put your name in again into the lottery, which increases your chances of being called as tribute, but you get extra bread. And so there was this guy who was getting extra bread for his family, and so he'd put in his name an extra 3 or 4 times to be called as tribute. Never was called as tribute, but anyway, I literally think bailouts need to be that way. Bailouts need to be Like, okay, well, we'll bail you out. We as a people with our tax dollars, because that's ultimately what it's going to be. They're going to be selling bonds and increasing our debt, which is going to be a burden upon me and upon my children.
But even then, when do they look out for regular? Just at no point though.
Oh, they'll be looking out if this is what funds the freedom dividend.
But no, but what I mean is,
screw a VAT tax, a bailout tax.
But no, I mean the government's not going to put. So it's, I mean, just to wrap it up here. So in the Senate and the Congress, in all three branches of government, well, I guess, yeah, when all three branches had their hands in this bill, and it got passed, the largest spending or the largest spending stimulus package in American history, right? Here we are. This ran out of funding last Thursday, but we're Monday, April 20th, and they created the program, funded $350 billion. What was the point of this program? The point of this program was for small and mid-level businesses that were struggling to pay employees. We're going to give them a loan that can be forgiven as long as they did everything they could to keep their employees on board. That's the only ask. We'll either forgive all or partially or a lot of the loan as long as you rehire these people and you legitimately use the loan so the business exists when they come back. Good. Great idea. Then what we're going to do is include corporate I would have never even thought to him. Imagine who said that. Well, what about the businesses that have more than 500 employees that are like restaurants? It's like, well, do you mean that have like tons of locations across the country? I understand just because, and a lot they mentioned in the Shake Shack letter, right? Just because we have a lot of employees and we're big, we make tight margins, we're not the richest company. I understand all that. However, we have other programs designed for these larger companies. So now we get to the point where it gets to the banks. What do the banks do? The banks say, we make money on the big loans, not the small ones. We're going to move the big loans to the top and push the small loans to the bottom. Then we get to the point where because Congress and Senate and everyone allowed so many idiots to apply for this, how many regular people could get the loan they need to sustain their business? How many people an $85,000 loan? Oh my God, what a lifesaver. Not $10 million. Sorry, all of them go to the front of the line. People who maybe need the loan, they don't need this one. They just want it. They're taking your money. Now there's none left for anyone else. And now what bills passed, Congress is on recess. Sorry, guys. Maybe next time we'll get it better.
Yeah.
That is how this played out for people.
It's absolutely pathetic. It's a dereliction of duty on behalf of everybody involved. And also, it just really, corporations have been shameless, but the morality of shrouding yourself or even trying to pass yourself off as a small business when you're Ruth Chris is just heinous. It's one thing to spin the truth and it's another thing to plain old lie. You know what I'm saying? Also, this really calls into question of what's the definition of big now? Like when I was a kid, I remember my dad worked at a company that literally was going through a division, okay? Because as a relatively large and successful company, all right, they were going through a division and they were worried. They were at 48 employees and you get all of these extra taxes and no longer get to be considered a small business if you have 50 employees or more. So they were literally like branching off a fulfillment company and then taking their warehouse staff and those 20 employees to go be part of that separate company that they technically subcontract to. So on paper, it looked like they only had 30 employees. Like now this bill is saying, according to the SBA, I just looked it up, they consider some companies up to 1,500 employees to be small business. 1,500 employees. Shake Shack nationwide has 1,601 employees.
No, they have 8,000 employees nationwide.
Okay, well, still 1,500. 1,500, that's massive. I don't think the NFL has 1,500 employees, not counting the athletes.
It really depends.
The organizational body of the NFL, I don't think has 1,500 employees.
No, well, it's because Roger Goodell makes $27 million a year.
So much money.
They can't pay anyone
else. So anyway, keep the conversation alive. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know if you guys are aware of any other SBA loan violations in the PPP program. I keep confusing that with PPE, personal protective equipment.
And I do want just the very last second.
Yeah.
Don't want to think. I do believe they are working. Much they hate the Congress and the Senate, they are working to try to just throw more money at the problem and hope it goes away. I do believe more funding is coming for the PPP soon. Again, it took longer to fund it than they needed because they were on recess for a couple of weeks, but yeah. Just to be fair, I will mention they are planning on throwing more money at the problem. We'll see how large companies find a creative way to game this one, but there's more to come.
Yeah. So anyway, let us know what you guys think below. Follow us on Twitter at PSP Radio 1, Instagram, and Facebook. This is Problem Solver Politics. We'll see you guys in the next video.